Before you pass judgment, let me explain how I found myself in this position. For what feels like a lifetime, I was the one who brought the good wine, funded the holidays, and smoothed over the awkward silences with a well-practiced smile, because that's what family meant to me. I never mentioned the inheritance, not because I was hiding it, but because I truly believed it didn't matter. Then, during a pre-Christmas family lunch, my sister, Charlotte, happened to glance at my phone and see my bank balance. In less than an hour, the whispers turned to demands. Share it or you're no longer one of us. I didn't argue. I just smiled. And the moment they looked away, I opened my notes app and started rewriting my entire life. What happened next? Well, you'd have to have been there to believe it. The rich, savory aroma of roast lamb with rosemary and garlic drifted through my Cotswold stone house, a scent that promised familial warmth and festive cheer. It was a beautiful lie, of course, and I, more than anyone, knew how fragile that illusion was. I'd spent the last week preparing for this Sunday lunch, polishing my grandmother's silver until my fingers ached, arranging and rearranging the dining room furniture to create a sense of effortless grace, and filling every room with arrangements of winter roses and eucalyptus. At 63, I'd learned that perfection in the details could, at least for a few hours, plaster over the emotional cracks that ran like invisible fault lines through our family. I was just basting the potatoes in goose fat when my cousin Helen arrived, her sensible little hatchback crunching on the gravel drive. She always came early, a silent offer of support. She bustled into the kitchen, a gust of crisp autumn air and genuine warmth. Her eyes, the color of a calm sea, took in the military precision of my preparations. The trays of honey-glazed parsnips, the bubbling cauliflower cheese, the ruby-red jug of gravy warming on the hob. She was dressed simply, in a comfortable woolen jumper and jeans, her short gray hair stylishly tousled. She was one of the few people I knew who was entirely comfortable in her own skin. I handed her the heavy dish of cauliflower cheese, our hands brushing for a moment. We'd never been overtly close, our lives having diverged dramatically after university, but we shared a quiet, unspoken understanding. She knew the performance this day required of me. The main event arrived precisely on time. Through the kitchen window, I saw the gleaming bonnet of a black Range Rover pull up, a car far too ostentatious for these narrow country lanes. My younger sister, Charlotte, emerged, a vision in a tight-fitting emerald green silk dress that was entirely inappropriate for a Sunday lunch in the country. It clung to her frame, showcasing a figure she worked relentlessly to maintain, but the fabric seemed to strain at the seams, a perfect metaphor for her life. Her perfume, something heavy and expensive, preceded her into the house. Behind her trailed my nephew, Liam. At 35, he still had the boyish good looks that had always gotten him out of trouble. But now there was a faint desperation in his eyes, a slight puffiness around his jaw that spoke of too many late nights and too much stress. He wore a designer polo shirt, the logo just a little too prominent, and a smile that had been perfected for placating creditors and wealthy aunts that I wiped my hands on my apron and went to the door, composing my own smile. Charlotte enveloped me in an embrace that felt more like a territorial claim than a hug, her sharp rings digging into my back. I was acutely aware of my own attire. A simple, soft cashmere dress in a deep plum color, its fabric a gentle caress against my skin, paired with flat, elegant leather boots. A single, understated gold necklace, a gift to myself years ago, was my only accessory. Liam leaned in to kiss my cheek, and I could feel the coiled tension in his shoulders, a wire-tight anxiety that was new. For the next half an hour, we performed the familiar dance of polite conversation over glasses of chilled Sancerre by the roaring fire. The weather, the traffic on the M40, some bland political news. I listened, nodded, and kept one part of my mind on the kitchen timers, ensuring every element of the meal would reach perfection simultaneously. It wasn't until we were all seated around the antique oak dining table that the probing began. Liam, cutting into his pink, tender lamb with deliberate elegance, remarked on the sheer quality of it all. He said I must have spent a small fortune. It was a strange comment, the kind of observation one makes when testing the waters, fishing for information without wanting to seem too direct. I simply replied that I enjoyed treating the family, Pouring myself a little more of the rich gravy, Charlotte raised her wine glass, her manicured nails a startling slash of red against the delicate crystal. Her eyes, magnified slightly by her expensive glasses, held an intensity one remembered from our childhood. The look she got right before she was about to make a devious move in a board game. She made a toast to me, for always taking such wonderful care of us. We all drank, but the atmosphere had shifted. I could feel it, a subtle change in the air pressure just before a storm. The conversation continued, but now it was peppered with odd, prying comments about my house, my early retirement, and how I managed to live so comfortably on my own. Helen participated little, her gaze shifting between Charlotte, Liam, and me, a silent apology in her eyes for something that hadn't yet happened. The moment of detonation came during dessert. I'd made a pear and almond tart, and my phone, which I'd carelessly left on the Welsh dresser, lit up with a notification from my bank. I should have been more careful. After a year of living with this secret, I had let my guard down. The message preview flashed on the screen, just long enough for Charlotte, who was conveniently reaching for the cream jug, to see it. Her hand froze mid-air. She said my name, her voice unnaturally calm. That number on your phone. A profound silence descended upon the room, thick and suffocating. Helen put her fork down with a soft clink. Liam looked up from his tart, his spoon hovering over the pastry. I felt as if the world had ground to a halt. I asked what number she meant, though I knew precisely what she had seen. The one from your bank, she said. She had moved closer to the phone, her eyes fixed on the now dark screen. It looked like it had a lot of zeros. Liam straightened in his chair, his earlier listlessness replaced by a sharp, predatory focus. He asked what she was talking about. Charlotte's voice had taken on a sickly sweet tone, the one she used when she was closing in on something she wanted. She asked if there was something I hadn't been telling them. I took a slow sip of my dessert wine, feeling their eyes on me like physical weights. For a fleeting moment I considered lying, concocting some story about a system error or a lottery syndicate win. But the truth was I was tired, so incredibly tired of pretending. I told them it was complicated. Liam leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with an intensity that unnerved me. He asked how it could be complicated. Helen looked at me, her expression full of concern. She knew. She could feel the ambush being sprung. I chose my words carefully, explaining that a year ago, I had received an unexpected inheritance from a former student. The silence that followed was deafening. An inheritance? Charlotte's voice was sharp. From whom? How much? Helen gently suggested that perhaps this wasn't the time or place, but Liam cut her off, his voice firm. He said this involved all of us. He didn't need to finish his question. Millions, I said simply. The word dropped onto the table like a block of ice, the shockwaves radiating outwards. Surprise on Helen's face, barely concealed greed on Liam's, and on Charlotte's a complex, lightning-fast calculation of shock, envy, and raw, naked opportunism. Million. Charlotte repeated the word as if tasting it for the first time, her face a mask of disbelief. She sat down heavily, the emerald silk of her dress groaning in protest as it stretched across her hips. She couldn't believe I hadn't thought to mention it. The question wasn't an inquiry. It was an indictment. I told her, quite truthfully, that I hadn't seen the need. For the past year, my life had continued on its quiet, predictable course. I still drove the same reliable old Volvo, still lived in my modest but comfortable flat in Bath during the week, still bought my clothes from the same few shops that valued quality over fleeting trends. The money was simply a number on a screen I rarely checked, a vast, silent ocean beneath the small island of my life. It was a safety net I never intended to deploy for myself. Liam, however, saw it differently. He chimed in, his voice laced with a theatrical wound. We're family, Aunt Julia. Family tells each other these things. His use of the word family was a weapon, and he wielded it with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I raised a single eyebrow, letting my gaze linger on him. Really? Like how he told me about his disastrous foray into speculative cryptocurrency, a gamble that had, by all accounts, left him teetering on the brink of financial ruin? I watched, with a certain detached satisfaction, as the color drained from his handsome face. He stammered, asking how I knew. I told him I knew a great many things, including the fact that he and his mother had been not so subtly measuring up the rooms in this house for years, waiting for me to die so he could inherit it. The blow landed precisely where I'd aimed. I saw him flinch, his carefully constructed plans crumbling before his very eyes. Charlotte, ever the protective lioness, leaped to his defense. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the tense silence. That wasn't fair, she snapped. Liam was going through a difficult time. They all were. The cost of living crisis, the lingering economic effects of the pandemic. She painted a grim picture of their struggle, the unspoken assumption hanging thick and heavy in the air, that I, with my sudden, obscene wealth, was their designated lifeboat. It wasn't a question. It was a demand disguised as a lament. You're our family, she said, and something in her tone, a smug certainty, told me this conversation had been rehearsed. They had planned this. The Sunday lunch wasn't a family gathering. It was an intervention, a boardroom meeting where they were the shareholders and I was the unexpectedly profitable asset to be liquidated. Helen cleared her throat, a gentle rumble in the strained atmosphere. She suggested that perhaps we should all calm down, but Liam, recovering his composure, waved her concern away. This involved all of them, he insisted. He wasn't saying I owed them anything, but, well, maybe I did. A little. We're the only family you have, he stated, a fact he presented as an unshakable truth. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost comical. So, I asked what exactly were they suggesting. Charlotte and Liam exchanged a look, a flicker of silent communication that passed between co-conspirators who have already divided the spoils. Well, Charlotte began, her voice slowing to a thoughtful, deliberate pace. I could help Liam with his debts. Clear them completely. And her own pension pot wasn't what it should be, and the roof on their grand house in Cheltenham was leaking again. Was there anything else? I asked, my voice dripping with a sarcasm I didn't bother to hide. Don't be like that, Julia. Charlotte had abandoned all pretense of subtlety now. This is serious. You have more money than you could ever spend in a lifetime and we're struggling. And why, I asked, was that my responsibility? Because we're family. Liam's fist hit the table, making the silver cutlery jump. Because family is supposed to look after each other. Family. I repeated the word slowly, letting it hang in the air. Like when Dad was dying, and you were too busy with a golf tournament in Spain to visit. Or when Mum needed help after her stroke, and you disappeared on a 2-month cruise. That was different, Charlotte muttered, her gaze dropping to her plate. Different how? Because there was no money involved? Helen sat perfectly still, her hands clasped in her lap. I could see in her eyes that she understood exactly what was happening. How this carefully orchestrated family meal had devolved into a crude shakedown. Look, Liam said, changing tack, trying to sound reasonable. We're not asking for a handout. You could consider it an investment. I could pay you back with interest once my new business venture takes off. His new business venture? The one he was funding by selling off bits of his late father's antique collection? I saw him flush a deep, mottled red. That was just bad luck, he mumbled. I corrected him. It was foolishness. And now he wanted me to pay for his foolishness. Charlotte's voice became a blade of steel. I think you're being deliberately difficult, Julia. We expect you to reconsider. Family means sharing. It means being there when others need you. I stared at her for a long moment, truly seeing my younger sister for the first time in years. The woman who had been jealous of me since we were children, who had competed for our parents' attention, who had spent decades collecting resentments like other people collect stamps. You know what, Charlotte, I said finally, you're right. Family does mean being there when others need you. I saw her eyes light up with triumph. That's why, I continued, it's so interesting that neither of you has ever once asked me why Daniel Finch left me his money. The question blindsided them. I could see their minds churning, trying to process this new piece of information. Daniel was a student in my 19th century literature seminar at Bristol University 20 years ago. A brilliant, painfully shy boy who was quietly battling a crippling depression. His parents had died in a car crash. He had no siblings, no real friends. He was contemplating ending his life. Helen closed her eyes, as if she knew where this was going. I told them how I'd spent hours with him after class, not for extra pay, but because he was a human being in pain. I connected him with the university's mental health services. I invited him to my flat for Sunday lunch when I knew he'd been eating alone for days. I lent him books from my own library. Small things, simple acts of kindness that cost me nothing but time. Daniel graduated, I continued. He went into tech, became extraordinarily successful, and apparently he never forgot the teacher who helped him when no one else would. He wrote to me occasionally, just to keep in touch. Letters about books, about life, about how he was building something important. I paused, taking another sip of wine. He died last year. Cancer. He had no family of his own, never married. And he left his fortune to me. Not because I was his relative, not because I was entitled to it, but because I showed him kindness when he needed it most. So when you talk about family, I said, looking directly at Charlotte, when you talk about being there for someone, I have to ask, when was the last time either of you showed any concern for my well-being without expecting something in return? This lunch. Did you come because you wanted to spend time with me? Or because you hoped I'd solve your financial problems? The silence was their answer. That's not fair. Liam mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. Not fair? I repeated, my own voice dangerously quiet. You know what's not fair, Liam? Spending years assuming this house would be yours one day, without ever once asking if I had other plans. You know what's not fair, Charlotte? Your first reaction to learning of my good fortune wasn't happiness for me, but a cold calculation of how much you could get. Helen finally spoke, her voice a gentle plea. Julia, I think we all just need to take a breath. No, Helen, I think we need to be honest. I stood up, my movements deliberate and calm as I began to clear the dessert plates. I've learned something important about money this past year. It doesn't make you generous. It just magnifies who you already are. That I carried the plates into the kitchen. The clatter of porcelain a sharp counterpoint to the furious, hushed whispers I could hear from the dining room. When I returned, they had composed their faces into masks of wounded reason. Julia, Charlotte began, her tone now conciliatory. I know this has been a shock. Perhaps we went about it the wrong way, but you can't blame us for being surprised, for hoping that your family would be a part of your new life. My family. I let the words hang in the air. For 30 years, I've hosted these gatherings. For 30 years, I've sent birthday and Christmas presents, always chosen with care. For 30 years, I've been available for every crisis call and every minor celebration. And do you know what I've received in return? I waited, but no one spoke. Silence. Long, yawning stretches of silence, punctuated only by requests for help or invitations to family events where I was treated like a pitiable spinster. A charity case to be included out of obligation, that's not. Liam started to protest. Isn't it? I challenged him. When was the last time either of you called me just to see how I was? Not how my finances were, but how I was. When was the last time you invited me to something without needing me to bring the wine or pay for the tickets? The silence was their confession. Daniel Finch, I said softly, called me every 3 months, just to chat, to tell me about a book he'd read, or to ask about my garden, or simply to hear my voice. He never asked for anything. He just cared. Helen had tears in her eyes. Charlotte and Liam looked like chastened children, but I could see the resentment hardening in their expressions, so yes. I continued, you're right about family. Family looks after one another. Family is there when you need them. The problem is, you haven't been my family in years. You've been acquaintances who happen to share my DNA. I walked over to the old oak coat stand by the door. What are you doing? Charlotte asked, rising from her chair. I'm going home, I said, pulling on my coat. This is your home. No, I said, taking my keys from the hook. This is a house I bought to make people happy who were never really happy to see me. Liam was on his feet now, his face a mixture of panic and confusion. Aunt Julia, you can't just leave. We need to talk about this. No, Liam, we don't. You need to accept that your financial rescue plan has just been cancelled. Julia, Charlotte's voice had risen to a shriek. You can't do this to us. We're family. I stopped, my hand on the heavy iron latch of the front door, and turned to face her one last time. You're right, I said. I can't do this. I can't pretend we're a family anymore when we so clearly are not. What's that supposed to mean? Liam demanded. It means I hope you enjoy the rest of the tart. Lock up when you leave. And with that, I walked out of my own country house, leaving behind 30 years of forced family gatherings and the shredded illusion that shared blood meant shared love. The cold November air hit my face as I walked to my car, and for the first time in hours, I could breathe deeply. Behind me, I heard their voices rising in argument, Charlotte shouting, Liam defending, Helen trying to mediate, but their words were snatched away by the wind as I drove back to my flat in Bath. I felt no sadness, no anger, only a strange, profound sense of relief, as if I had finally set down a weight I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to walk without it. Daniel's inheritance hadn't changed me. It had simply given me the freedom to stop pretending. And tomorrow, I thought, as the warm, honey-colored lights of the city appeared before me, I would begin to decide what to do with that freedom. The city lights were a comforting blur in my rearview mirror as I drove through the familiar streets of Bath. I navigated on autopilot, my mind replaying the look on Charlotte's face when I'd mentioned Daniel's regular calls. It was as if I'd been speaking a foreign language she couldn't comprehend. My phone had been buzzing non-stop for the entire journey. First Charlotte, then Liam, then Charlotte again. I ignored them all. I parked in my designated spot, climbed the 2 flights of stairs to my modest but peaceful flat, and poured myself a large glass of red wine. I sat by the window overlooking the quiet residential park, a view that had brought me more solace over the years than any manicured country garden. This was my true home, this small, book-lined sanctuary where no one expected anything of me except to be myself. The phone rang again. This time it was Helen. I answered, surprised at how steady my own voice sounded. Julia, are you all right? I'm fine, I said. How are things back there? Helen sighed, a weary sound that traveled down the line. Charlotte is incandescent with rage. Liam is, well, he's pacing and doing sums on his phone. I think he's calculating exactly how much money he thought you were going to give him. And you? I'm washing up and trying to process what just happened. There was a pause. Julia, what you said about Daniel Finch, you never mentioned him before. There was no reason to. It was private. But the way Charlotte and Liam reacted, it was exactly what I expected. That's why I never told them. Are you coming back to the house tonight? No. Are you going to fix this with them? The question hung between us. Outside my window, a young couple walked hand in hand through the park, laughing at some private joke. I wondered when I had last laughed like that with a member of my family. Helen, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you come today? And please be honest. Another long silence. When Helen spoke again, her voice was softer. Because I wanted to see you. I know we've been distant, but I always thought that maybe one day we could be, I don't know, friends again, like we were as children. And now I see that Charlotte and Liam came for very different reasons. You knew about their financial problems? I knew Liam had lost a lot of money. Charlotte mentioned something a few months ago about how you were comfortable, and that maybe you could help out when the time was right. I thought she was speaking hypothetically. And now you realize it wasn't hypothetical. Now I realize they've been planning this. I leaned back in my chair, a bitter mix of validation and sadness washing over me. At least Helen saw it clearly. What are they going to do? Are they staying at the house tonight? I don't know. Liam is pushing for them to drive to your flat and sort this out. Charlotte says you're just being dramatic and you'll change your mind by morning. I'm not going to change my mind. I know, Helen said softly, and I think deep down they know it too. That's why they're so desperate. After I hung up, I stayed up late, staring out at the darkened park and thinking about the story I told them. It was all true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Daniel hadn't just called me every 3 months. Over the last 5 years of his life, we had become truly close. He had started visiting first occasionally, then more frequently. We'd have dinner, go to concerts, argue about books for hours. In many ways, he had become the son I never had. When he called to tell me about his diagnosis, I wept more than I had for any member of my biological family in decades. And when he died, leaving me not just his money but letters explaining why he considered me the only real family he'd ever had, I understood that he had felt the same way. My phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. Julia, this is ridiculous. We are adults. We can discuss this civilly. Come for breakfast tomorrow. Your house. 9 a.m. I didn't reply to her. Instead, I composed my own message and sent it to Marcus Reynolds, a brilliant former student of mine who was now a partner at a top law firm in Bristol, specializing in estates. Marcus, could you call me tomorrow? I need to make some changes to my will. His reply came 10 minutes later. Of course, Professor Carmichael. Is everything all right? I typed back, a small smile playing on my lips. Everything is perfectly clear. For the first time in a long time. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. I made coffee, dressed with care in a pair of well-cut trousers and a silk blouse, and waited for Marcus's call. It came, as I knew it would, at 9 o'clock sharp. Professor, what can I do for you? His voice was warm and professional, a comforting sound. Marcus, I need to completely redraft my will. And I need to protect my assets from any potential legal challenge. Has something happened? I recounted the story of the Sunday lunch, the ambush, the entitlement, the thinly veiled threats. I painted a picture so vivid that Marcus was silent for a full minute after I finished. I understand, he said finally, his tone now edged with a cold fury on my behalf. What do you have in mind? I want to create an irrevocable trust, I began. I want every penny legally ring-fenced against any claims of kinship. And I want to change the beneficiaries. Completely. As I spoke to Marcus, my phone continued to vibrate with texts from Charlotte and Liam. I ignored them until one from Helen arrived. Julia, they're at your country house. They're waiting for you for breakfast. Charlotte says if you don't show up, they're coming to your flat. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I replied, let them come. An hour later, I heard their voices in the hallway outside my flat. They didn't knock. They simply started talking, their voices loud enough to carry through the solid Victorian walls. We know you're in there, Julia. Charlotte called out, her voice shrill. You can't avoid us forever. I opened the door to find her and Liam standing there, with Helen hovering awkwardly behind them. Charlotte was wearing a severe-looking business suit, as if dressed for a hostile takeover. Liam had attempted a more casual look, but his expensive trainers and tense posture betrayed his anxiety. His eyes darted around my hallway, no doubt assessing its modest value. Can I help you? I asked, my tone polite but distant, as if they were canvassers for a political party I didn't support. Can we come in? Liam asked, already trying to step past me. Actually, I'd rather we talked out here. Julia, this is absurd, Charlotte snapped. We are family. We need to talk about what happened. What is there to talk about? Everything. Liam's voice rose, and he glanced nervously down the hallway before lowering it. Aunt Julia, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No one is saying you owe us anything. Well, not exactly, Charlotte interjected. But you can't pretend we don't have certain expectations. Expectations based on what? On the fact that we're family. Liam seemed genuinely bewildered by the question. That we've cared about you all these years. Have you? Cared about me? Of course we have, Charlotte said. Why do you think we come to these family dinners? I thought I hosted them. Well, yes, but we come. We show up. And that's caring for me? Showing up for a free, 3-course meal with expensive wine. Helen cleared her throat again, a nervous habit. Maybe we should. No, Helen, I said, my eyes fixed on Charlotte. I think we need to finish this. Julia, Charlotte said, her tone shifting to one of pained reason. I know you're upset. Maybe we were too direct. But think about it. What are you going to do with all that money? You can't spend it all. You don't have children. You don't have... She trailed off, but I finished the sentence for her. I don't have what, Charlotte? A family of my own. We are your family. We should be part of your legacy. The word hung in the air like a toxic vapor. My legacy. I repeated it slowly, You want to be part of my legacy? Exactly, Liam said, visibly relieved that I was finally understanding. It's not that we expect everything, but a fair share. A fair share of what? Of your inheritance. Of what Daniel left you. Daniel didn't leave you anything. He left it to me. But you're rich now, Charlotte said, as if that explained everything. And we're not. And that's my problem because we're family. Liam had lost his patience again. Because family is supposed to look after each other. We've had this conversation, I said, my voice flat. No, we haven't, Charlotte insisted. Last night you got dramatic and stormed out. Now we're here to talk like adults. Adults who show up at my door demanding money? We're not demanding, Liam said, though his tone suggested otherwise. We're asking. We're expecting you to do the right thing. And what would the right thing be? Charlotte and Liam exchanged another one of their conspiratorial glances. Helping Liam with his debts, she said finally. Helping me with my retirement. Maybe setting up a family emergency fund. And if I refuse? Why would you refuse? Liam asked, genuinely baffled. It's not like you'll miss the money. What if I refuse? I repeated. Then, Charlotte seemed to struggle for words. Then we'd have to reconsider our relationship. What does that mean, exactly? It means, Liam said, finding a fresh surge of bravado, that maybe we couldn't keep being a family. If you can't be there for us when we need you, then what kind of family is that? The silence in the hallway was thick enough to taste. I could hear the distant hum of traffic, the ticking of the grandfather clock in my living room, the frantic beating of my own heart. So, it's an ultimatum, I said finally. It's reality, Charlotte replied. Family means sacrifice. It means sharing. If you can't do that, if I can't do that, you'll cut me out of your lives. Julia, Helen began softly. I don't think that's what they mean. I didn't look at her. I looked at Charlotte and Liam. Is that what you mean? Charlotte lifted her chin defiantly. It means we can't pretend we're a happy family if you're not going to act like family. And acting like family means giving you money. It means being there when we need you, Liam said. And right now, we need you. I understand. I nodded slowly. So if I don't give you money, I lose my family. Don't put it like that. How should I put it? Put it like, you can choose to be generous or you can choose to be selfish. Liam had completely lost control now. You can choose to look after the people who love you, or you can choose to hoard money you didn't even earn. Money I didn't earn. I repeated his words, a cold anger beginning to replace my weary resignation. An interesting way of looking at it. Well, it's true, isn't it? Charlotte said, her voice dripping with venom. You just got lucky. Daniel picked you for some reason, but it wasn't because you deserved it more than anyone else. You weren't his real family, you were just convenient. The cruelty of the comment was like a physical blow. Helen gasped. Even Liam looked shocked by his mother's words. Becky, Helen murmured, using Charlotte's childhood nickname in a plea for calm. What? It's true. Julia has always thought she's better than us. The professor. The intellectual. But the truth is, you just got lucky that some rich student felt guilty about something. Guilty about what? Whatever. Maybe he felt sorry for you. Living your pathetic, lonely life. Mum, Liam said quietly, but Charlotte was unstoppable now. Maybe he left you the money because he saw you as a charity case. A lonely old woman who needed looking after. Are you finished? I asked, my voice utterly calm. I'm just saying, don't act like you're so special. Like you deserve that money more than we do. At least we're your real family. My real family. I repeated the words, letting them echo in the small space. Yes, the people who love me. Exactly. The people who care about my well-being. Of course. The people who value me for who I am, not what I can give them. Charlotte hesitated, as if finally realizing the trap she had walked into. The people who would be happy for my good fortune, instead of immediately calculating their share. The people who would call me just to chat, who would care if I was lonely, who would notice if I was struggling or sad or needed help. We do care. Really? When was the last time either of you asked me how I was? Not if I needed anything, just how I was. Silence. When was the last time you invited me to anything without needing me to bring the food or pay for the bill? More silence. When was the last time you made me feel welcome in your lives, instead of like I had to earn my place? It's not, Liam began. Isn't it? Then answer the questions. They couldn't. So, here's my answer to your ultimatum, I said, my back straightening. You're right. We can't pretend to be a happy family.
Julia. No.
Not because I won't give you money, but because we were never a happy family to begin with. That's not true. Then tell me, what will you miss about me when I'm gone? And don't say my Sunday lunches or my Christmas presents. Tell me what you will miss about me, the person. The question hung in the air, a challenge they couldn't meet. I could see them scrambling, their minds racing to find an answer that didn't sound completely hollow. Your conversation, Liam said finally. What did we talk about, Liam? About things. What things? He couldn't answer because we both knew our conversations were polite, superficial exchanges about the weather. As Charlotte and Liam's angry voices faded down the corridor, I stood by my desk, the phone still warm in my hand, feeling as though I had just surfaced from a 30-year-long dive. It wasn't sadness I felt, or even relief. Not yet. It was clarity. A clarity so pure and sharp it made me wonder how I had lived for so long in such a dense fog of obligation. Professor? Marcus's voice brought me back to the present. Are you still there? Yes, Marcus, sorry. I was just processing. Are you sure you want to proceed today? We can wait a few days if you need time. No, I said, my voice firm. I've had a lifetime to think. It's time to act. For the next 2 hours, Marcus and I meticulously crafted what he clinically termed a complete estate restructuring. To me, it felt like finally writing my own story after decades of letting others hold the pen. First, I explained, I want an irrevocable trust to hold 90% of my assets. I want it ironclad, unbreachable, impossible to contest. That can be done, he assured me. And the beneficiaries? Helen Carmichael receives 25%. Your cousin? Any restrictions? None. She can do whatever she wishes with it. And the rest? 50% goes to a scholarship fund I want to establish. We'll call it the Daniel Finch Fund for Resilient Scholars. For students who are struggling, who lack family support, who need someone to believe in them. I could hear Marcus typing furiously. And the remaining 25%? 23% is to be divided among several local charities I've been supporting anonymously. I have a list. And the final 2%? That, I said, smiling to myself, goes to Sophie Lynn. Who is Sophie Lynn? A student, I explained, who received one of my anonymous scholarships 2 years ago. She graduated last month and wrote me a letter, trying to find her anonymous benefactor just to say thank you. Are you going to contact her? I already have. We're meeting for coffee tomorrow. After I finished with Marcus, I sat in my favorite armchair by the window and pulled out Sophie's letter. I had read it a dozen times, but each reading revealed a new layer of her character. Dear anonymous benefactor, it began, I know you chose to remain anonymous for a reason, but I couldn't graduate without at least trying to find you and tell you what your generosity has meant to me. The letter went on to describe how Sophie had grown up in foster care, aging out of the system at 18 with no family and no support network. She had worked 3 jobs while studying to become a teacher. My scholarship had been the difference between dropping out and realizing her dream. But more than the money, she wrote, it was the notes that came with the checks. Little words of encouragement that told me someone believed in me. I kept them all. I would read them on my darkest nights. The notes. I had almost forgotten about the small cards I included with each scholarship payment. Simple phrases like, your education is an investment in the future, or I believe in your potential. I never imagined anyone would keep them. Now I am a primary school teacher. Her letter continued. Every day, I see children who remind me of myself. Bright, full of potential, but with no one in their corner. I want to be for them what you were for me. Proof that someone cares. The letter ended with a line that had made me weep the first time I read it. I don't know if you will ever read this, but I wanted you to know that your kindness is multiplying. Every student I help is an extension of your gift to me. That was the difference, I realized. Daniel had left me his money because he knew I would use it to create more kindness in the world. Sophie had received my help and had chosen to dedicate her life to helping others. Neither of them had seen my generosity as an entitlement or an opportunity. My phone buzzed with a text from Helen. *, are you okay? C and L are furious, but I think they finally understand you're serious. *, I texted back.
*, infine.
Can you come over this afternoon? There's something I want to give you. *, she arrived 2 hours later, looking nervous and uncertain. Julia, I hope you know, I didn't know what they were planning. I know, I said, ushering her in. That's why I wanted to see you. I handed her a thick envelope. Open it. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a check for £500,000 and a letter. Julia, what is this? Your inheritance. I decided to give it to you now instead of waiting until I die. I can't accept this. Why not? Because I didn't do anything to deserve it. Yes, you did. You were the only person in that room who treated me like a human being instead of a bank account. Helen had tears in her eyes. But this is too much. Read the letter. With trembling hands, she unfolded the paper. Dear Helen, for years, I have watched you navigate the difficult dynamics of our family with grace and dignity. You never asked for anything, never expected anything, but you were always there when it mattered. This money comes with no strings and no expectations. Use it as you wish for your retirement, for travel, to help others, or simply to have the security of knowing you will be okay. More importantly, I want you to know that I consider you the only real family I have left. I hope we can build a genuine friendship based on mutual affection, not familial obligation. With love and gratitude, Julia. When she finished reading, Helen was crying openly. I don't know what to say. Say you'll be my friend, my chosen family. Of course, she whispered, hugging me tightly. But Julia, what about the rest of them? They are officially out of my will. Marcus is preparing all the legal documents to ensure they can't contest it. Helen pulled back to look at me. Don't you feel even a little bit sad about it? They're your family.
No, Ellen.
You are my family. Sophie Lynn, who I am meeting tomorrow, is more family to me than Charlotte or Liam ever were. That night, after Helen left, I sat down to write more letters. The first was to Charlotte. Dear Charlotte, by the time you read this, you will have received the legal documents from Marcus. I am not writing to explain or justify my decisions, but to say goodbye. You have chosen to see our relationship as transactional, and I have decided to honor that choice. If my value to you was based on what I could give you financially, then it never had any real value at all. I wish you the best in your life, but that life will no longer include me. Julia. The second was to Liam. Evan, I always believed you would grow into a man who understood that respect is earned, not inherited. I was wrong. Your ultimatum freed me. Thank you for that clarity. I hope you find the success you seek, but it will not be with my money. Aunt Julia. The third letter was the most important. Dear Sophie, I am so looking forward to meeting you. Your letter arrived at the perfect moment, reminding me why generosity is worthwhile when it is freely given and received with gratitude. In the last 48 hours, I have completely redefined my concept of family. It is no longer based on blood, but on genuine connection and mutual respect. If you are open to it, I would like you to consider becoming part of my chosen family. Not as a beneficiary of my charity, but as someone with whom I could share holidays, conversations about books, and the small joys and sorrows of life. I have much to learn about being family to someone. Perhaps you can teach me. With fond anticipation, Julia. As I sealed the letters, my phone rang. It was Marcus. Professor, I have good news. The trust is structured to be virtually unchallengeable. Your assets are protected. And the new beneficiaries. It's all in order. Are you sure you don't want to include any provision for your sister or nephew? I'm absolutely sure. Very well. When would you like to sign? Tomorrow afternoon, I said. After I meet Sophie.